They should have said the poet. The poet. They should have said the poet. The poet.
This is Sending Poets, a podcast about ideas. Our goal is to understand metaphorical truths within the beauty we find in the human experience. Sending Poets. Here is a haiku about Bartlett's Book of Quotes. They are familiar. My name is John. With me is Bob and Tucker. What's up, guys?
Morning. Hey, what's up? Good morning.
And we're going to start a series which we'll likely come back to from time to time, random famous quotes and our thoughts. So I did mention Bartlett's. Bob and I have a Bartlett's book of familiar quotes. Tucker has the 2,548 best things anybody ever said. And yeah, the idea here is we're just going to randomly pick a quote, read it, and then see what we think about it. And just, full disclosure, we all have kind of void power here. If we read one that, or we can tell right away, like, yeah, this probably isn't a good one, we can skip to another one. We're not trying to be too constrictive here, but yeah, this should be pretty fun. And Tucker, you've already got one ready to go, right? You're using a random number generator. Do you want to tell us what number?
This is 1,810.
Cool.
And the author of this quote is Joan Baez, the legendary singer-songwriter. And I do like this one, even though it is a random number. But it just says, the easiest kind of relationship for me is with 10,000 people. The hardest is with one. Mm-hmm. And I can relate to this, not that I enjoyed anywhere near the success as Joan Baez, but I can relate to that at a smaller level, where it's like you present a piece of yourself through art to a mass audience, and that's the only way they know you.
Mm.
And being a metal musician, you oftentimes are painting in reds. It's angry. It's angry. It's the hostile aspects of life that you're presenting. But that's generally just a very small percentage of who you are as a person. But that's the only way people know you. And sometimes there's people who think that they have a bigger relationship with you than they actually do, because they don't really know you.
Yeah.
They just know this small part of you that you presented. And they took that as you, and that's not really the case.
Yeah, it's the thing that struck me was about the contrast she's saying. It's like easier with more people, harder with less people. And I think what struck me there is like, yeah, like, individual relationships, they are hard because they take, I think, a lot of work, right? Like communication can be hard. Just, learning to be compatible with somebody and learning their quirks and how they, either complement or conflict with your own quirks, that's can be like, that can be a lifetime worth of work, honestly. Like my wife and I have been together for over 20 years and we're still kind of finding out, oh yeah, that little part of your personality or my personality doesn't really blend well with the other one. So how do we, so that's what really stuck out to me with, like you're saying, with like 10,000 people and like, here's this small part of me.
That's easy.
It's easy. It's like, here, put out this song and like, yeah, very interesting. Very interesting.
Choosing one person and going, this is all of me. That's where the work comes in.
Yeah. Very interesting.
I just two quick things. One is it reminds me what you're talking about, Tucker, about people only know you a tiny facet of you, but they think they know you. I don't know who came up with this quote, if it is a famous person or not, but never meet your heroes.
Yep.
That rings true to me in that, people make up what do they call it, parasocial relationships, right? These are, you watch you watch PewDiePie or something, little kids watching YouTube, and they feel like they have a relationship with this person, like they feel like they really know them in depth. They really have a relationship.
Yeah.
And it's obviously, it's no chance to do a 1 to a million relationship or a 1 to 100 million. It just doesn't exist, like that doesn't exist. And then number two, in contrast to you, Tucker, and maybe both you and John, I am not a performer. I am not someone who I do very well one-on-one. Like that's my comfort. My comfort is like even at a cocktail party or something like that, I would stand on the wall. I would just bite my tongue because I don't feel comfortable in that situation. I don't feel comfortable with a lot of distractions going on. I'm not very broad. I'm very narrow and deep. And but if I get one-on-one and somebody else is like, let's have a conversation. I guess my point is I don't like small talk. Like I go to some very deep shit right off the
Yeah,
top.
I'm the same.
And so there is that where I have a barrier to having a one-to-many relationship. Just doesn't translate well with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Good one, Tucker. Well, I know it was random generator, but yeah, good one, random number generator. Well, cool.
All right.
Yeah,
So,
Bob, do you want to go? So for Bob and I, since we have these Bartlett's books, which have page numbers and quote numbers on pages, we figure we'll just take turns, between the person who's not reading, guessing, or not guessing, but picking a page number, picking a quote number. So how about I'll pick the page number for Bob, and your quotes are between pages 3 and 863, and I'll pick page 717.
okay.
And so then you'll go to that page, and then you'll tell Tucker the quote numbers to pick from.
Thank you. I've got 717, and we're going from 1 to 24.
13.
13. I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker, and I have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker. And in short, I was afraid.
Oh, who's that?
T.S. Eliot.
Oh, dude.
Good pick.
Well, okay, so real quick.
Hold on, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. This is fabulous. Let me read this one more time just so I can.
Okay.
I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker, and I have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker. And in short, I was afraid.
So just real quick, T.S. Eliot, fun coincidence. My grandma's funeral was just a few days ago. Rest in peace, Grandma. She lived to be 101. Wow, what a trip. But my uncle read a T.S. Eliot poem about roses at the service.
Wow.
And then randomly a T.S. Eliot quote pops up.
That's
great. Anyway, yeah, what a trip. Anyway, so the quote itself, though, the greatness, the moment of my greatness flicker, and the eternal footman snicker. Wow, I think it's like, to me, it just was immediately kind of again going back to the musician thing from the previous quote, but like sometimes I think that's part of like maybe that'll be my. Again, this is relevant to my grandma. My grandma had a lot of accolades, right? She was a World War II nurse, and then she had very many nursing positions through the rest of her life. She authored like more than 25 books. She had all kinds of awards. I kind of recognize it as like in a way of like, there's no way I'm going to top it. I know that's not the point. It's not like I don't believe the point of my life is to like try to outdo what my grandma did, but it's like, dude, the bar's so high, it's almost freeing, right? Just for me to just be like, I'm just going to try my best, but like I don't even have to worry about trying to like live up, to her accolades, right? It's very interesting. But sometimes I think, well, if I had a claim to fame, yeah, the band stuff was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. So maybe that was my moment of greatness flickering, right? And the eternal footman, right, is like just this perpetual thing of just like, yeah, everybody's moment kind of flickers. It's not like, it's pretty rare that anybody kind of truly is immortalized. I mean, it happens, right? But it's in the grand scheme of the number of human beings who have ever lived, the percentage of people that are still remembered is just minuscule. It all kind of flickers. And then afraid, I guess, that's how that kind of, maybe that is a terrifying thought. Anyway, that's kind of where I went to it. What about you
Yeah, I
guys?
mean, especially the second half of it, it's, if you look at life and go, is my best moment already past? And was my best moment just a laughing stock? That's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't believe that, but
Yeah.
yeah,
It's definitely something to be afraid of. That premise is,
but I
yeah.
think the bigger point there is it's all subjective.
Yeah.
Like, your grandma wrote 25 books on nursing, but that doesn't interest me. So, like,
Yeah.
that's not like something I would aspire to do myself. But it's
Yeah.
cool as
Right.
shit that she did it.
Right.
You
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
gotta just find stuff you enjoy and go with it.
Yeah. What about you, Bob? Did anything come to you?
Yeah. I guess two things. The fleeting nature of greatness, or subjective nature of greatness. I think that's powerful to consider. It's like it's a relative thing. I mean, greatness, I think of, is a function of the number of people who know of your deed. May not be the totality of greatness, but that to me is kind of, the common definition of greatness is, number of people who will remember you, know your name, know your deeds. And so it's relative to other people. It's relative to, a group of people. It's relative to a team of people. And then contrasting that with what, I can't remember who said it, but how many people there are, and we all are going to be, given our coat and have to leave the party at some point, right? This is the eternal footman who gives you your coat and snickers
Yeah.
at you as you
Yeah.
walk out the party, and the party keeps going. Party always keeps going, but you thought you were the life of the party, pun intended.
Yeah.
And then out you go. And then the second point is where he says, and in short, I was afraid. This is something that weighs on me, dealing with mortality, but thinking that there is, and I've mentioned this maybe a couple times on the pod, probably multiple times in conversation, this image in my mind of old people planting trees under which the shade they'll never sit, as a metaphor for the most beautiful thing. And the actual most beautiful thing is the society that these people have built, but I can't see that. I don't know what that would look like. It's impossible for me to visualize. But the most beautiful thing I would see is just the leading edge of this thing, or the far edge of their society, which is just an endless stream of old people planting trees. And to me, that metaphorically equates to something very, very powerful, which is sacrificing one's life. And this is something that we consider heroism. It's exalted in I think every society. I don't know anyone who doesn't exalt a martyr, or someone who does a heroic act and gives of themselves the last full measure in order to push everybody forward. It's so romantic, and fills what we would call humans. I mean, humans are these finite living creatures that are destined to die. And this is my point, differentiating from animals that don't know their own mortality. So an animal is afraid. An animal is unwilling, unable, cannot conceptualize, abstract the concept of I will die no matter what. This might be my moment to use what I have. And obviously it's tragic for young people to die. If a young person sacrifices themselves, that is something, both romantic and horrific. Thinking, young people in war, or
Right.
firefighter or something like that. But what I think of is, strangely enough, like Fukushima, like where there's this nuclear disaster and there was this radiation and there was ongoing catastrophe, and there was a volunteer group of old people who said, look, maybe they're 60s or 70s, like the radiation, what am I going to lose? A couple years? Maybe I shorten it a little bit or whatever. And so they volunteered to go in and try to put out the fires or try to restart the cooling or whatever. This concept of a monk, a Buddhist monk, self-immolating to try and stop the Vietnam War, right? This is the famous Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah. We were just listening to Rage last night on the patio, by the way. Another fun coincidence.
Yeah. But it gives me chills to this day to think about how it must have felt to sit. And so there's a difference between just burning to death and sitting there in peace and equanimity, burning to death of your own hand. My point is the feeling I would model, and I don't know the truth, nobody does. I would feel it would not be pain. It would be ecstasy. It would be something that this man had practiced and anticipated the choice of doing this for many years. And the ecstasy would have been akin to running into a burning building to save your family, or trying to, people talk about lifting a car off of your wife or your kid who's on the side of the road, and that people do superhuman things and probably tore every ligament and tendon in their body and just scrape their hands. I would feel nothing. I've told the story probably too many times. Let me tell it one more time. I got caught in a hailstorm, and one of my kids was outside in this hailstorm. I felt the first hail strike my head, and it hurt. But then I felt nothing after that as I ran to my kid and I got her inside. And only about 15 minutes later, when I went to go take a shower and take off all these wet clothes, did I realize I was covered in welts. Like my back, my shoulders, my arms, everything covered in welts, like I'd been paintballed or something. I felt nothing.
That's
so
crazy.
I can never get away from this moment of the reality of being mystified, taking my shirt off and just being covered in injuries, and realizing you're not going to feel the pain. When you're in that moment of self-immolation, you're not going to feel the pain. You're going to feel ecstasy. You're going to transcend your body. Your subconscious is going to dial off all the signal of negativity, and it's going to dial on all the it's like a out of body experience. You end up floating above yourself. You disentangle with your corporal sensations, and you are now in a new realm of feeling, and it is fully created by you for you subjectively. And so back to the in short, I was afraid. I think we fear if we don't run to this thing, if we don't, because I'm waiting for this moment in my life. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. I'm waiting for the opportunity to give my life at some point. That way I don't fear like some endpoint that is not useful, that is not for a greater good, because I will die. Obviously, everybody dies. Yeah. And my greatest fear is to die. And no offense to John, your grandmother, but to die in my bed surrounded by my family, to me is what I'm afraid of. I don't want to go in my sleep. I don't want to be, I want to use it. Like I want to have an opportunity in this world to use this last bit of what I've got and change something for the greater good. And I think if everybody were to have that opportunity to do that, that would be the society that these people plant trees for. And I don't know what it looks like, but that's what I wish for.
It's not exactly the same idea, but just, because I can't help myself but recommend movies when there's a movie called Midsummer that I would put on your list to keep in mind for the future when it comes to society and this kind of thing. Only it's dark, so just kind of a warning. but it is a good movie. It is quite a trippy movie and thought provoking for sure. Well, cool.
Well, and Bob, I'll just tell you where my mind went when you were talking about this, but do you just reach a certain age where you go, it's time, and you got to go get in a knife fight with the worst person you know?
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's a different flavor of it, but it's kind of the same thing. I mean, you're kind of picking maybe that is for the best. I don't know. Maybe pick a moment to do a thing.
It would drastically alter society if that was
that was the common thing. Yeah.
Just reach a certain age, and either you or the worst person you know is somebody's going away.
Yeah, I mean, I would think there is something about, and this is, I also think of societies that have done this in the past. So societies where it's very harsh. I'm thinking, people who live up in the north, far north, where, as you get to a certain age, people would self-select out, and that's kind of, I mean, they're indirectly that is doing what I'm saying. Whereas if you have less demand for food and shelter and attention and all the rest, then it would probably, there are hardcore societies. There are hardcore, if you can't ride your horse today, you don't come with the group, and if you don't come with the group, you're done. I mean, there's this is the nature of humans and past requirements. So I can kind of see it that way. I would think more in the future of, and most people would never get this opportunity. So that's what makes me afraid, is to end it at this. The person who runs in the house, always burning house, always wanted to run into that burning house. Okay. My point is, I don't think it's a conscious choice to decide to run into a burning house to save somebody. I think that person has always chosen that path for themselves, and you don't get to make a conscious choice. So you have to make your conscious choice every day, preparing yourself, just like the monk, every day preparing yourself to be in meditation and to be ready when the time calls. And you're going to be called someday. And then the thing happens, and you didn't predict it, but the thing happens, and you're already running into the house. I think a normal human being would approach the house and feel the heat. And I'm saying, once you feel that heat, you will not go inside. But the person,
sorry, finish up, and then
I was going to say, the person who doesn't feel the heat would run inside. And that's a hard distinction to make until I can tell that story about the hailstorm. You don't feel the hail. Maybe the very first one, but then it turns off. And so what I'm saying is, the person who would still feel that, the hero isn't the person who can go through the pain. The hero is the person who has no pain going into the building. It's very weird to think about it like that, but that's what the reality is to me.
I can't help myself, but that makes me think of the movie Tenet, because he explicitly describes that the protagonist in that movie is this guy you're talking about. There's a character who tells him, I think I'll have the lines pretty accurate here. He goes, he's like, most of us think we run inside the burning building, but until we feel that heat, we can never know. But he looks at the protagonist and he's like, you do. And that's kind of the point that he's making. He's that guy that you're talking about, Bob. So
wow, I forgot about that. By the way, John, you get one Tenet quote per week.
I know. I realized So it's my Tenet reference. Yeah. As long as it's like limited to like Tenet, because I was thinking like, oh, bonus round of this, like what movie does this make me think of? Can I tie this into some quote from a movie? But anyway, yeah.
Well,
I forgot about
so that's
that.
fair. That's fair.
It
like
kind of
one Tenet
reminded me
reference.
of the point I kind of reached yesterday in the last Three Body Problem book. But it's like you had, and I'm probably gonna get the names wrong because the Chinese names don't register as names to me the way English names do. But I think it was Luoji as the wall facer during the deterrence era. Like literally stared at a wall for 50 years, and through force of his just determination and his absolute belief that he would absolutely end life on Earth to prevent it being overtaken by an alien race, was able to do that for 50 years, and his replacement lasted like an hour before she was tested and failed the test. And I was like, people aren't cut out for jobs equally. Like,
yeah.
You got to find your niche.
Yeah.
and lean into that. And
Yeah.
it was just like, yeah.
No,
Not everybody's going to run into that burning building.
Spoiler alert, by the way.
Yeah. Too late, though.
Well, you watched all the shows. I don't know how much they go into depth on that particular aspect.
The Chinese show, that was just the first book. That was 30 episodes of the first book. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
See, I didn't know that.
Now I know how it ends, so now I don't have to. Now I don't have to even bother.
Well, that's not how it ends. I haven't got to the end yet, but
yeah,
very, very. I agree with Bob. It's very good sci-fi.
But I don't think he knows who Luoji is, and maybe you do. I don't know, but
it doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't tell him who the actual character is from the Netflix adaptation or whatever. I mean, that's but yeah, it is. I think you're right, Tucker. I do understand what you're saying in that regard, and that is the whole point: is the intensity of the mindset prevents the thing, or it creates the thing, whatever you want to call it. But the choice is not made in the moment.
Yeah.
Like,
and they talk about that with the samurai dueling and how they would stare at each other for sometimes up to 10 minutes before anybody swung a sword, and the whole battle was determined.
That's it.
Prior to any movement.
Yes, that's the best framing, I think, of what I'm discussing, and what I think the way to avoid the fear is to stare it down for your whole lifetime. And then in that moment, there's one swing of the sword, but the outcome's already predetermined.
Yes, you've already played it out.
Yeah,
every possible way in your mind, and there's only one way it can go.
But it still happens. I mean, the fight still takes place. It's over in a second or less, and it's not like, in the movies where they have a 30-second clanging swords on each other battle. It is just. At that point, by the time they actually move, it is destiny.
Yeah.
Wow. T.S. Eliot for the win. Holy shit.
Yeah, wow. I know. I was like, that's only the second quote. All right. So my turn. So let's see, Tucker, why don't you pick the page? Because you picked the quote number. Yeah. So Tucker, pick the page between 3 and 968.
I'm going to do 853.
853, which gives us quotes. Bob, pick between 1 and 20.
16.
16. All right, so here's the quote, and then I'll explain who it is afterwards. Turned wrong way round, the relentless unforeseen was what we school children studied as history. Harmless history, where everything unexpected in its own time is chronicled on the page as inevitable. The terror of the unforeseen is what the science of history hides, turning a disaster into an epic. Ooh. It's from something called The Plot Against America, which came out in 2004. by Philip Roth. That name kind of sounds familiar, but
Playwright, I think. He's a screenwriter, playwright, something like that, I want to say.
yeah, there's a couple other of his books that sound, where quotes are coming from, that sound interesting, like The Prague Orgy from 1985. All right. But anyway, okay, so back to this quote. I'll read it again because I think it's kind of a longer one, but I'm pretty intrigued. But anyway, okay, so it goes, turned wrong way round, the relentless unforeseen was what we school children studied as history. Harmless history, where everything unexpected in its own time is chronicled on the page as inevitable. The terror of the unforeseen is what the science of history hides, turning a disaster into an epic. Wow, that's heavy, man. I have some thoughts, but do one of you guys want to go first?
Oh man, it's just one of those, like, it's the truth, like,
yeah.
It's just objectively true. We study it as history, but it's really just the chronicling of the biggest disasters and successes of civilization.
Yeah.
When you look back on it, you can put the pieces together. But when you're in the moment of it, there's too many moving parts, and you can't see how it's inevitable.
Yeah, exactly. Like hindsight, the whole thing about like looking back is sometimes so much easier to, again, narrate, right? And justify.
Well, you just stole one half of my answer. It was the hindsight of 2020. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
I would say this second component, other than hindsight being 2020, but how much of that's a deep thing, meaning once you know the outcome, as being hindsight, once you know the outcome, it's not just that you're going to get it right, as it were. It's like, I think back to September 11th and not even knowing what was happening, let alone what would happen in the future. That's the real heavy. Like in the history books, we can, have our kids or young people now read up or learn up about this moment, but they can't understand what it was like to not know how everything had just changed in this moment. You don't even know it yet. How much of an impact culturally, geopolitically, economically, socially, how much of an impact this one event was in real time, even though history books, they're just going to put one sentence after another, and it's all going to follow from this first plane hits, and then the second plane hits, and then one hits the Pentagon and one goes into a field in Pennsylvania or whatever, whatever. I mean, it's just going to be a series of facts that do not embody the uncertainty, the feeling of the unknown, the wonder, the awe. I still remember to this day waking up that morning where my TV was my alarm clock, and it came on. I don't remember what channel it was. I don't think I had cable.
Every channel. It was
every channel. Thank you. Every channel.
Yeah.
Didn't matter what. Yeah, exactly. Didn't matter. And I worked at a bar, and I went to the bar, and it was on the TV there. So, like, from the moment when I woke up, it was just starting to happen. I think the first plane had hit. So they don't know what's happening. By the time I get to the bar, everybody's just like looking at each other. It was just so weird.
Yeah.
Everybody started talking about this thing. Like, nobody was really like doing business. We were just like all watching the TV. It was like one of these JFK moments. Like, everybody knows where they're at. They can always recall what happened, what was going on in the room, who was there, what were you feeling like, what day was it? Was it a hot day, cold day? Like, the contextualization of that memory is so profound because your body is just zinging, like with energy of like the moment, this historical moment. And hopefully it never happens to me again or the world. I know it's not going to happen like that, but the point is, like, when you get to one of these pivot points that will end up in the history book, JFK getting assassinated, MLK assassinated, one of these things, landing on the moon, one of these things, everybody tells a story where they were that day when it happened, what happened that day, etc.
Yeah.
And so what I'm getting at is, when you read it, and you're turned around on this thing in your mind, it's not the same as being there for real. And so think back, okay, we have this one that was 20 years ago. Think about 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago, all this deep history we read about or we, think we know, and how different that must have been to the reality of living through these moments for all the other countless humans. And then number two, I think subtextually in this quote is, the fact that history is written by the winners. Like we trust that this thing is real, that this is an honest accounting. This is objective. It's education. It's akin to chemistry or mathematics or whatever, history. Well, not so fast. Not so fast. And as a child, I think, you have nothing to fight against this thing. You're tasked with repeating this thing. You're tested on repeating this thing. It's almost like a, Wizard of Oz moment. They got the guy behind the curtain or whatever. You don't even think there's a curtain, let alone think there's a guy behind a curtain.
Right.
All you see is the great, magnificent, powerful Oz, his head, yelling at you of facts and figures, and this happened and that happened, and D-Day and 9/11 and whatever, Hiroshima and all these things. Is like, well, I'm tested on it. I want to get an A, so I might as well remember these things, right? There's no way to fight back. And then later on, you realize, oh, the good guys always win. In every history book, I don't care who's writing the history. Whoever wrote the history, the good guys always win. Why? Well, who writes the history?
Well, yeah, and I mean, think about this. In our generation, and I also want to point out, I worked at a bar when 9/11 happened as well, and it was the weirdest day ever because it was standing room only, and you could hear a pin drop.
Yep.
It was surreal. But when I think about it, it's like, okay, 9/11 happened. And then we find out it was largely funded by Saudi Arabia and a group of Saudi Arabians. Okay. And then we go to war with Iraq and Afghanistan. On paper, it's fucking ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. And I guarantee you, people who lived through historical events in the past probably felt the same way about the events they lived through, where they're just going, none of this fucking makes sense. Why are we doing this? Like, there's no sense in fighting this war or attacking these people or, sending our young people off to die for this. But it happened anyways.
Yeah.
And then it got written down as a sanitized, whitewashed version of what actually happened, and that's history.
Yeah. Chronicled on the page as inevitable, the quote even says. So, yeah, I have three things. I wonder if hopefully I can remember all of them, but these like built-in icebreakers kind of, where were you when XYZ happened? And so, for me, 9/11, I did not work in a bar. I worked at a Papa Murphy's. But the thing that sticks in my mind that was so gnarly is it was like a morning show. It wasn't the Bob and Tom show. It was like the just local morning radio show. And, it's like, well, we just got this, breaking kind of news. I guess somebody flew a plane into the World Trade Center. Like the initial take, I remember this very clearly. It wasn't clear that it was a passenger plane. The take that these dudes on the radio was like, oh, it was some drunk guy in a propeller plane and just like tink, like hit the building and bounced off. I mean, they were laughing about it because the details were not there. It was just a plane crashed into the World Trade Center. Wow, must have been so. I mean, I remember the first thing I heard about it was that it was some joke, like it wasn't real. And then as soon as it was like, oh, this was a terrorism thing, like immediately 180 in the tone of these dudes. It's like, oh shit, this is like serious. I remember that stark contrast. It was very gnarly. That was my experience.
Well, I do have another quick story, and I will remember this till the day I die because it is the only album I ever went and bought at a midnight release. And so at midnight on 9/11, I bought the Slayer album, God Hates Us All.
Oh, wow.
And I listened to it one time, went to bed, and woke up to 9/11 happening. And the thought, maybe they're right.
Wow.
Wow.
Freaky.
That is crazy, yeah.
And it's literally the only time I've ever gone to a midnight release. And I've not done it since because I've got to do my part to fight terrorism too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sorry, maybe it was my fault. I won't do it
Way
again.
Way to go, Tucker. Well, the other two things. So both of you alluded to this thing about like this nonsensical in the moment, people realizing like this is nonsensical, and I think that's the first line in the quote speaks to that, turned wrong way around. Where I think he's saying like they're studying this stuff and calling it history, and kind of to your point too, like Bob, it's like maybe this guy's point, Philip Roth said this quote, maybe he would have preferred to have been told, or learned more like, yeah, this is what it's actually like in the moment, though. Nobody really knows. Somebody makes a decision. Some people are like, this doesn't make sense, but they have to do it anyway. This chaos, right? That it seems like he's saying, again, it was sort of whitewashed. It's just sort of like taught as like, this is what happened. We're looking back on it here. Look, it was inevitable. Like, instead of like in the moment when shit's going down, it's a different story than the one you'll read. So the third thing I think I wanted to get to is like, that's why to me, it's like all the more reason it's important to have all these stories out there, because it's absurd to think that there's one objective truth, I should say one story that has all the objective truth. The idea that there's like just objective truth that would fit in one story at all seems absurd, right, to me. But so I think it's so important to just like be aware of like all the stories, like, this particular story is told from this point of view. Cool. Maybe there's some stereotypes in there. Okay, cool. But like, it's incomplete. Like to really know what really happened. Don't you want to have all these other stories from other sources? I think that's so important. And then here's the bonus game that I get a point for. What movie does this make me think of? Everything Everywhere All at Once. when Alpha Wayman says, actually it's just regular Wayman. Sorry. He just says, I know we have to be kind, especially when we don't know what's going on. Please be kind. Such a like powerful line to me. It's because I think that's just such an important thing, man. Not like be controlled by the knee-jerk reactions of our subconscious models and stuff that might tell us to be aggressive and be angry and like actually here round 2 bonus points for me. We just watched The Big Lebowski yesterday because Kim wanted to, by the way. It was great. She's like, I think I should see it. I'm like, cool, I'll watch it again. But the character Walter that John Goodman plays, I think he is this, it's very clear to me that he's this point. It's a cautionary tale. Like, this is what happens when
you're over the line. You're over the line.
When you just like can't let go of this instinctual anger and you just let the anger drive you. Like, here's all the shit that can happen. Here's why you don't do that. Anyway, that's kind of my interpretation. So, wow, I am racking up bonus points on these bonus rounds of movie references. anyway, so yeah, cool. That was a deep one. Cool. Yeah, I want to proceed into round 2. Tucker, you want a random number generate? Yeah.
And we got 277. Okay, this is not a good one.
All right, I can't wait.
The quote is just no.
That's beautiful. Well, again, what is the book? 2,548 best things anybody ever said.
Yeah.
No.
But
you know what?
Given context, it is one of the best things ever said. So this
absolutely
is attributed to President Jimmy Carter's daughter, Amy, when asked by a reporter if she had any message for the children of America.
Interesting.
Wow. No.
No.
I don't suppose it says what age she was.
No,
it
doesn't.
That's too bad. But you said, but does it have the year? I'm very curious.
No, it doesn't.
That's too bad. I wonder if we could sleuth that out, like, because I feel like, knowing what age kind of might change my opinion about it, if that's fair to say. Because like if she was like 8 years old and like, oh, again, kind of, well, it's
Yeah, if she was
adorable, maybe like,
35.
yeah, yeah, right. If she's like an adult, like, no, then like, oh man, does that kind of sound depressing? Like she maybe is just, yeah, I don't know. That's.
But what makes her someone who would have an opinion on that? It just seems like a weird
Because she's the
precedent.
president's daughter, I guess. I guess that's it, right?
Obviously, I'm just trying to get to the point of like, does she have a PhD in anything? Is she like a fame? Does she get her like? Why would the press ask somebody this question? Like, why is the press focused on such an inane question to somebody who is
potentially inane? Like you said, maybe she does work for has some credentials.
Maybe she was older. Yeah, fair enough. Maybe she was older and she had a career of whatever. I guess my point is to become significant, that you want to make a headline out of president's daughter says blah 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 about the, you know what I mean? Like, I can see it going backwards is my point. Like they're working into trying to create a headline. They, meaning mass media, the press, whatever you want to call this thing. It reminds me of, I just saw this on Reddit a day or two ago, this old-timey video clip of Sidney Poitier up at a lectern talking to a bunch of reporters. And he gets really upset and quite emotional. They don't do all the lead up to it. The little video vignette I saw was him essentially just disparaging the press. Why are you all asking me about questions about being a Negro? Why are you all asking me about this one topic? He's like, I am a man, I'm an American, I'm an artist, I am a whatever father. I like, he lifts off all these things. I'm well educated. He lists off all these things. He's like, and all you guys are asking me is about this one thing. And obviously we all know why, because they want to write a headline about it. They want to make some salacious connection with it. They want a gotcha moment that sells newspapers, or, in today's parlance, clicks. And so the beauty of the answer of no is just shutting down the machine. Like they're trying to, they don't want her answer, is my point. I'm not trying to disparage, Jimmy Carter's daughter, but they're obviously not going to her because she's an expert of the thing. It's that she's tied to the president of the United States. I would presume, by the way, this was while he was in office, so I would also presume she was a teenager or whatever. I don't remember her exact age, but so to say no in that context is a beautiful answer, because you can't make a big deal out of that. You can't spin that. You can't turn that into a headline that titillates.
Yeah.
And so that is the point of not being led around, because the press is asking a question. Let's just say someone asked her that question that Tucker read. Well, to me, in my background, it's not the answer that is driving the conversation. It is the question. The person who asked the question is the one who's driving. And so people get caught up giving an answer. But the reality is the one driving the buggy is the one asking questions. And so to flip that around and say no, flatly, and not give them any more, I think is a very high level jujitsu effect of verbal combat.
So I didn't find her age, but it looks like this reference comes from an article written by Danny Miller in the Huffington Post in 2006.
Oh, wow.
Although it says it was updated 2011. Well, just when he wrote about this, and it says, the article itself is I Heart Amy Carter. And the paragraph, it just says, so this guy's saying, I do believe the children of presidents should be left alone, especially while they are minors. On the other hand, I have to admit that I've always been fascinated by this rarefied group. My all-time favorite first kid was Amy Carter, More than any of the others, she seemed unscathed by her experience in the public eye. My favorite Amy Carter moment was when a reporter asked her if she had any message for the children of America. She looked at the reporter square in the eyes, thought for a few moments, and then gave this brilliant reply, no. So that does seem to indicate that she was a kid. It wasn't like later in her life that she was like first kid, like, oh, hey, you're the president. Do you have a message? It's just, no. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I least expected outcome here of a two, not just a single word quote, but a 2-letter quote. That was like actually pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it worked. It actually did work, Tucker. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, and I got to bring up this other one that's on the same page because it kind of relates to the history conversation we just had. But I really dig it. It was W.H. Auden, who lived from 1907 to 1973. But he basically, the quote is just, political history is far too criminal a subject to be a fit thing to teach children.
Wow.
Political history specifically, it
Yes.
said. Yeah, what a trip, because that it's one of those paradoxes. It's one of those paradoxes, right? Like, well, it said to teach kids or teach children. What did it say exactly?
To teach children.
Teach children. So like, what is the age, right? Because obviously it's one of those things that, at some point it's good for humans to be aware of these things.
I
But yeah,
would think after sex ed age, because you teach sex ed, that's how to fuck one person. And then you teach political history, and that's how to fuck a bunch of people.
That's well
Tucker.
played, but that's well played. But to give a non-comedic answer, I think the point of it is it's never appropriate. Meaning, we should change the political.
I agree.
Like the
because
political
what we're doing is not appropriate. So
it is not
we should be teaching our children how to do something that is appropriate.
Yeah.
How could you?
Well reasoned. Yeah.
How could you stomach having one of the most important topics of modern human life, politics, be something literally offensive to teach to children?
Yeah.
It's right. Yeah.
Travesty.
Yeah. Very interesting. Cool. Well, that was a fun twofer. Let's see.
Is it back on me?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Tucker, do you want to do a page between 3 and 863, and then I'll do the quote one, and then
3 and 863, 42.
Going back.
It's gotta have the answer to everything.
Oh yeah, 42, right?
Nice. Very nice. Okay, 42. 1 to 45.
Well, let's go 42.
42, doubling up. Where no law is, there is no transgression.
Ooh, I like that.
Let me reread that one, short and to the point. By the way, this is what is this? Motorcycle Guide to the Universe? What is the 42? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, Hitchhiker's Guide.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, yeah.
Okay.
To the galaxy, yeah.
To the galaxy, thank you. This is the Holy Bible, by the way. This is the epistle of Paul, the apostle, to the Romans. Okay, where no law is, there is no transgression.
So transgression meaning like somebody did something wrong, and this is saying if there's no law for it, then you can't say that it's wrong, right?
Yeah, there's no crime.
Wrongness only exists when there's a law to say so.
There you go.
Well, and I know we've discussed this before as the Bible being an allegory to metaphorical truth. And I think this is a perfect example because it points out that before we could write, we were animals. Once we were able to write and record a law and alter our behavior to follow those laws, we became something more.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Like the elephant. I don't know if you guys know this. It was in the news recently. There's like an elephant in, I think it was Missoula. I just can't remember. Somewhere there, elephant in a zoo or something. It was somehow car backfires. This elephant goes running down the street and like kills somebody. Well, but you don't hold the elephant criminally, responsible for murder.
Yeah.
Just to that point, like animals don't commit murder. Animals kill people. Animal could do a thing.
Harambe, right? I mean, wasn't that the whole thing?
Yeah, he didn't even do anything wrong, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it was just a potential that he could have hurt that child, but I don't think he even was aggressive to the child. They just killed him cold-bloodedly. But anyway, the point is, I think Tucker's right on the money here, is that the law makes us human. The law creates right and wrong. When it's law of the jungle, it's literally just I survive or you survive. And whoever survives is the quote unquote right one. There is no right or wrong, really. It's just, law of the jungle is kill or be killed, straight up. I think that's exactly how to look at it. So changing from that everybody's your enemy and you're everybody else's enemy into a cooperative sense of that we have a predetermined code of conduct. And that changes. Like, here's my point. And this is actually Tucker's point, but here's what I'd say is we are obviously still animals. We're not a different thing. You give me one generation. Imagine just taking, 100 million babies and then bringing them up in an alternate culture where they're all kind of like allowed to survive, but they're all be fearful of each other, tiny little groups, tribes, if you will. And there's no rules about how you deal with outsiders. Like, there might be internal rules or whatever, but you do anything you want and you should be fearful because they'll do anything they want to you. Like, I think you would lose your humanity. In one generation, you'd be back to a quote unquote animal without the law.
Yeah. Well, real quick, just follow up. Catch up bonus round from the last one. What movie? Empire Strikes Back. Luke Skywalker. No, that was the tie-in for the Noah quote. And then what movie does this one? Judge Dredd. I am the law. Anyway, but what I was thinking was
you didn't do it with the Sylvester Stallone voice.
Oh yeah, wait, let me try.
I am the law.
I am the law.
I am the law.
But I think what's interesting about this quote is like, until it's written. I already forgot the exact wording of it, but the idea was like, before the law exists, then there's no right. But so the interesting part to me is like, at what point is it the official passing of the law? In like today's society, obviously this quote goes back.
Where no law is, there is no transgression.
Yeah. So for me, the point is like where no law is fungible, you guys. It's flexible. It's not rigid. Even though we can say, well, technically, if the law doesn't exist in the books, like in today's society, again, like if there isn't an actual law, okay, yeah, that makes sense too. But I think there's an important aspect to not be so strict and rigid with that 100% of the time. In other words, like, because if that was the idea, like only the laws, if this is very absolute, black and white, only the laws that exist are the ones that matter, period. I think that's just completely eliminating the variable of time, right? Because today, okay, yeah, I'll give you that. Like today, those laws, that makes sense today. But like in 5 years, in 50 years, like it seems dumb to just be like, yep, all those laws today that we agree, these are good laws today, everything, to just assume that they'll all be just as relevant and applicable and correct and fair and right in 50 years is nonsense. So at some point, the change starts. That's the point that I'm getting at, is like, at some point, I think we have to all appreciate that, like, something's changing, probably because of time, right? Something is changing. There probably should be a law. Are we going to be able to get this law, in the books today? No. So there's this, this flexible period, right? Where I think even though there's no law, I think people can recognize, like, we probably should adjust our behavior because eventually this probably will be a law anyway.
But I think you're thinking of law as an objective individual thing. And what I'm reading on this is the definition of law as a rule agreed upon by a majority of people in society. So I don't think it is like a law from 1853. I think law is a living thing. It's whatever today's group agree upon.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so the law means you have a society of people, a group of people who are interested in rules. So they're not just law of the jungle. And then they come up with some kind of a way. I don't know if it's majority rule or, a king's rule or an emperor's rule or a chief's rule or whatever. People who are left-handed, they rule. Whatever the arbitrary thing is of who rules, but something that is codified, that this is, before it happens, this is the rule. I think that's the distinction between. So without that, however you shape it up, you can have no transgression. You can have no, anybody doing wrong. So the point is, this book, we just quoted from, is including a letter that's 2,000 years old or whatever. I mean, some approximation of that. And prior to that, there was thousands of years of laws and rules as well. But prior to that, there was a period with none. And I would think it would literally be, bands of humans, still teams, but just tiny shrunk down family units, coming upon other bands of humans, and might makes right. Whoever wins is the one who is correct or right or whatever you want to call the thing. There's no other metric other than I killed them or I escaped, or they killed me or they escaped from me killing them. And I think that's what, that is the differential between an animal and a human type animal, whatever you want to call that, is having this living rule that society prospers under, such that, just think about how small the largest level of human organization is under jungle rule. You're just not going to get above 100 people, 200 people. It's just not going to exist. You'll never get trust. You'll never get cooperation. You'll never get delayed gratification. You'll never get a history. You'll never get, like building upon previous iterations of success. All these things that we take for granted now are all based on this one thing, which is this, societal level. Not now, by the way, not all people have to agree on it. I think that's kind of my counter to you, John, is that it seems like you're like, but well, maybe we should change these things. And I think you're right. We do change the laws, but it's never fully accepted by all the people. There's like a tipping.
Which I'm gonna lay my own quote out here. So if anybody's compiling a book, it's 11:50 on September 8th, 2024. But my quote is, the only laws that have not been broken are the laws of nature. Every man-made law has been broken numerous times. The laws of nature cannot, because they are the laws that determine reality.
Interesting.
I like it.
Yeah, because I was going to say the whole there's no transgression thing. Like it seems to be a tricky thing. I think that's my main takeaway of this quote is like many things. I just think it's hard to be objective about that. At the end of the day, I think it's hard to just be like, hey, there's no law, so there's no transgression. I think someone would be like, there's no law yet. I feel transgressed upon. And so just saying like, no, you're wrong because there's no law. I don't think that's helpful in the long run. I think
I'm just saying the definition of law is a mutually agreed upon rule by a majority of the society. Whatever you want, a majority or subset of the majority. What I'm getting at is no one's always there's not going to be 100% agreement of what the law is. And because of that goes back to just another way of saying law of the jungle. Because if I fear for my life, I'm going to kill you. And if I fear that you're going to kill me and I have an opportunity to kill you first, law of the jungle style, I'm going to take that. I'm going to feel good about that. The person I'm killing is going to feel terrible about that. They're going to be like, no, the law should be I kill you before you kill me.
Or
Well,
nobody kills anybody.
but
But I
then you're
guess that's
just
not
dead.
law of the jungle.
You're just dead then. You would run away, and then I would chase you down and kill you. And there you go. My point is, it is the nature of the word law, like embedded in the definition of what law is. Now I think you could rephrase yours by people wish this could be changed. They want it to be different than the way it is. They would like to not go to prison for doing this thing that they didn't think was bad and they don't agree with. What I'm saying is law is implying a societal level of acceptance of a thing. Doesn't mean it's forever frozen in that concept is forever frozen. They do change, but I'm saying they have to change. For it to be a law, it has to change at the level of society, not the individual or a fraction of the group. Does that make sense? Like,
I think to me it's still hard for me to get behind this quote. I think the more we talk through it, the less I like it, because I just think, like, at some point it's like, yeah, like, it just seems like a nonsense argument, dude. There's no law, so there's no transgression. Like, sorry, dude. Like, I don't know. It's really hard for me to get behind it right now. I'm just like,
okay, so imagine there's no society, there's no illegality. Like, it's implying that there are a group of people who are now working by rules and not just backing into their own self-interest universally. So if you have 10 people and they all want to be the one riding, let's say there's 11 people, 10 have to carry, one gets to ride. Well, if they vote, everybody's going to vote the same way. It'll be an 11-way tie. Like, they all vote to be carried, right? Nobody's going to vote to carry somebody else.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I'm saying is there has to be a rule-based system that doesn't take into account anyone's individual point of view. Whereas if you say there is laws that, because they don't satisfy my personal whatever, I'm sure you can have many examples of it being real. I'm not saying it's not true, but because there's a law that doesn't take me into account, it's not fair, it's not productive. And what I'm saying is you're missing out on the stability of a society. Okay, the law only applies in a societal context. And if you think you would give up the societal benefits of being on a team for the individual benefits of you get to make up any laws you want and nobody gets to transgress you, or you get to transgress other people even though they don't think you should. I'm just saying, think deeply about that. Think very deeply.
I don't. If I gave the wrong impression, I apologize. I certainly wasn't suggesting that. I agree with you. There is the utility and usefulness of having laws and stuff. I think I must be focusing on like a very specific edge case scenario that I'm like not doing a good job explaining.
Well, what I'm trying to disengage is not the law. I don't think the law is the value. It's a society that has laws is the value. That's what I'm getting at. The law is implying a society.
Right. Yeah.
And so regardless of right or wrong of the law itself or agreeing or disagreeing, I'm saying the trade-off between having a society that is run by laws, even laws we don't agree with, versus a mob, for lack of a better word, an anarchistic mob. I think having an anarchistic mob would be so terrifying, would be so off-putting and unsettling. Sure. It would be so destructive that the contrast between the two, even if the laws were, and I'm not saying they're not, let's say the laws are terribly written. There's a bunch of inequality and there's a bunch of, historical imbalance between haves and have-nots or whatever in the quote-unquote law itself. I'm saying the progress of a society, going back biblical times, the recognition that even the concept of a transgression is a function of a society. Like, you would just not, it's literally just might makes right. If you don't have a law and a someone who transgresses or who does not, you're going to be Judge Dredd. I mean, I hate to go back to it, but it's literally, it's like judge, jury, executioner, right? That's the tagline. He's the judge, jury, executioner. So you would be all three essentially. You would be the one who decides everything, and then your opposition would as well. And then those two things would come to a battle, and it would be physical in nature, and someone would lose. And there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair point.
But I don't think that law in and of itself is an absolute correct thing or good thing, in that they should be changing and evolving over time.
Yeah.
But it evolves as a society compared to, like, me just saying I don't agree. Because look, there's plenty of laws I don't agree with. Let me just be the first to raise my hand. Plenty of things I disagree with that I think should be changed. I'm very vocal about these things. So not being hypocritical, I'm not saying like I think everything's great as it is and it should just be sustained this way indefinitely. That's not my point. But the ability to change the law does not negate the power of the society that has a law, a concept of law. Like, show me a single working society that has no concept of law. I don't even think it. I don't think it's contradicted in terms. I don't even think it exists.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would argue even like the remaining uncontacted tribes in the Amazon who have no written language still have societal laws.
Right. Yeah, I would assume so too. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm just approaching this quote as like, very like open to interpretation. It's like in the way that, like, the legal drinking age is 21. And I appreciate that as like a guideline, a baseline to start from. But I also believe that, the reality exists where a parent has, a 20-year-old kid and they can give them a beer and it's against the law, but like everything will be fine. Like it's not gonna, like, society won't collapse. I mean, I could come up with a story where a 20-year-old gets a beer and society does collapse, but I think it's kind of silly to just, try to just expect, here's this one story. You cannot drink. You cannot responsibly drink before you're 21 because that's the law. I mean, at the same time, like if somebody's like, yeah, that's actually how I raise my kids, like, cool. I mean, I'm not going to jump in and be like, no, make them drink beer. Like, obviously, I hope that's obvious. I'm not suggesting that either. There's like this flexibility around
you're trying
it.
To make child alcoholics. I know you.
Yeah, I'm trying to groom them, right? Anyway, there's this gray
I agree
area,
with that. I think we're talking past each other a little bit because
sure.
I totally agree with what you're saying. My point is that you cannot make what we would define as a law suitable for individuals. It has to be done as a category. This is why you get into these weird things of like, why 21? Like, why not make it a educational thing where we have to pass a test in order to drink?
Yeah, right.
And this goes back to age of consent kind of thing. Tucker has
an
idea, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is, when I say law, I'm not trying to stand on the legality of any law. I'm saying a law is a subset of a society, and a society that works by mutually agreed upon rule states that are, open to evolve over time is such a profound greater good than. So let's say I agree with you. The legal drinking age of 21, when you have 18-year-olds drafted to go kill and die for their country, is preposterous. Let's just say.
Right. Yeah. Kind of weird, right?
Fair enough. What if you have someone who is 40, but they're mentally immature such that they cannot modulate and moderate their consumption, and they're going to cause problems all the time. Say they have an 85 IQ, they live in the world. No one can stop them from doing what they do because it's legal for them to do that. But a 16-year-old is not capable. When the 16-year-old has a high IQ and is totally socially responsible and whatever. So there's a million different ways I can see the point of one size does not fit all.
Yeah, there you go. One size does not fit all. I like that.
100%. But my point is very clear that having a rule system that does define one size fits all is the definition of not being an animal. So what I'm saying is having this compromise situation, this very complicated situation of a group of individuals, because we're all individuals, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you're an animal or a human animal or whatever you want to define it, like there's no combo where a society is a true thing. A society is an aggregation of individuals. But my point is the ability for a group to formulate some sort of a structure that is not beholden to each individual as an individual is what sets us apart. Now, if you make rules where John has his rule, Tucker has his rule, Bob has his rule, all of our wives have their rules, and our friends have their rules, you would not have society.
Yeah, because my rule is that I'm always right, and that means everybody else is wrong. You know?
But so's mine, Tucker.
Exactly.
My rules, that's my point. Is once you get into these mutually competitive rules, you no longer have society. And so to me, the law is less about the individual law of you have to be 21 to drink alcohol in America or whatever. It's more about
the agreed hallucination. Like we all agree.
Correct.
That even though we don't, I shouldn't have said all agree, but that we all agree that, the one size fits all doesn't actually exist. This is probably the best. It is a compromise. It's, whatever the system is voted on, whatever, but we agree that we need something like that in order to, be a society, flourish as a society. Yeah.
To gain the benefits of all the other stuff. So we do take a hit that I can't just have it my way every way. I can't just have it my way all the time. That's very hard. I mean, animals don't get along with that. Most animals are not cool with that.
Yeah.
They're going to fight for their right to party.
Yeah.
Quote Beastie Boys. Okay. So we're going to have a standoff continuously in a social, or we're all just individuals. I mean, that could be a thing where we all just go our own way and we don't collectivize. There is a way to make that work, but you're not going to have what we have now, which is the benefits of a large team. So anyway, going back to biblical times, I think it was a revolutionary concept, and going back to, let's just say, writing, as a function of writing. So going back to Old Testament, going back to the origins of civilization, going back to these ideas being revolutionary compared to just killing everybody. I mean, this is very, very gnarly to think about it, but the amount of just life is whatever you get to hold on to, and if you can't hold on to it, it gets taken from you by force.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm cheating a little bit, but there's another quote that I think ties in with what we're talking about from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it is that truth is beautiful without doubt, but so are lies. And human laws are lies. You can't kill somebody. You can't do this. No, I absolutely can. But we all agree on this lie to create a better society.
Yeah, so we can all get along and go.
Like I said, the only laws you can't break are the laws of nature. All the ones made up by men, you absolutely can.
But whether it's a truth or a lie, the point is it creates a transgression.
Yes.
That concept of transgression does not exist before law.
Yeah. Before a law was just something you did.
You would not feel bad. Okay, let's just get to the feeling level, not the intellectual level, just feeling. If there were never a concept of law for you, and there was no concept of transgression, or let's just say sin, like the power of a concept of sin or shame or transgression or being a rule breaker or whatever, does not exist at the animal level. The concept of whether they could do it or not, I don't even know, but they don't even have the concept of this thing. Like the words matter. The fact that we have words that allow us to think in a framework. Like before a transgression, I would do no wrong. Imagine living a life pure of conscience, that you do no wrong. Everything is self-justified. There's literally nothing you could do wrong because there is no law with which to transgress.
Yeah, it's not a very good society.
It's not. It's Garden of Eden and it's hell. It's both. It's like this mix of, like, the Garden of Eden is a place without sin. Okay, there was one law: do not eat of the tree of knowledge. And immediately that law gets broken, and it ruins everything for the animal nature of humans. Okay, because they never die. They don't have to eat. I mean, they don't have to hunt or farm. The food is just all there. Nobody's attacking them. They just get to live in infinite bliss. So this is, metaphorical to a state of being an animal. They don't know what comes next.
Well, look at the show The Boys. I mean, the supers in that show are basically individuals who cannot be punished or constrained by human laws, and not one of them's a good person. Nobody
ask how
goes
far you are
high road. I'm caught up. I'm through season 4, but nobody's really taken the high road. Like, I'm gonna be a being of pure enlightenment and good. No, they're all fucking horrible individuals.
Yeah, it's an early show for sure. Especially that fourth season, it kind of hits too close to home for me. There were some parts I was like, I don't know if I can keep watching this, man. Oh my god.
A little on the nose.
Yeah. Just doing a quick time check. We could probably get one more. I'm gonna try one more.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Put in here. I think.
I picked Page last time.
Yeah, so I think Bob, you picked Page.
Okay.
Between 3 and 968.
451.
451. And the numbers on that page are 1 to 24, Tucker.
8.
8. Things always seem fairer when we look back at them, and it is out of that inaccessible tower of the past that longing leans and beckons. Wow. Literary Essays, Volume 1, a few bits of Roman mosaic. It's James Russell Lowell, who lived in the 1800s. So yeah, wow, I'll read that one more time. Things always seem fairer when we look back at them. How appropriate, hindsight we were just talking about.
Totally.
And it is out of that inaccessible tower of the past that longing leans and beckons. Wow, man.
I got something for this right off the top.
Yeah.
And fact check me on this with your Googles. I believe the coining of the term nostalgia was out of, I want to say, World War One, and it was like a disease or like a psychological state of being that was injurious to people, meaning there was a coining of a term or a coining of a concept of thinking about a past thing that doesn't exist.
Yeah, there's a couple things that come to mind, but just Googling it quick, what Google pulled out of the Oxford Languages dictionary, I guess, mid 18th century, so pre-World Wars, but in the sense acute homesickness, but it comes from modern Latin, translating German, the German word for homesickness, Heimweh, from the Greek nostos, which means return home, and algos, meaning pain. So yeah, an acute like homesickness. I think that's what you're. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Is this acute homesickness that harkens back to a time that perhaps never existed. I mean, maybe it did, but anyway, the point is like a psychological distress by thinking back nostalgically. And one more time with that quote, John, please, if you don't mind. One more time.
Yeah, things always seem fairer when we look back at them. And it is out of that inaccessible tower of the past that longing leans and beckons.
Yeah. Yeah, because this thing, it exists in someone's mind, of course. It doesn't actually, it's not a place, it's not a thing you can get to. This past state of being, this longing, this homesickness, it's this tower that is built up in your mind. Might be different than someone else's mind. I'm just saying, like, history is not an objective thing. I mean, something might have happened objectively at a certain place and time, but the concept of history, the narration of, a past time and place for humans, it doesn't exist anywhere. It's not a reality. Yeah. It's not a real thing. The history, what we make of it. By the way, how many interesting parallels to history have we gone on so far?
Right.
Like, what was that Philip Roth one about the history books, being 180 degrees on all that? I mean, we've hit like 3 or 4 different things on history now. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, totally.
But the point being that having this nostalgic take on the world offsets the present reality, because nothing's going to compare to, having this homesickness view of how nice things once were. Like, nothing can ever compare to that. You will never ever win that mental battle of thinking about. What it reminds me of? So I'll do my movie quote here. My movie callback is Scrooged. I don't know if you guys remember Scrooged.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so the Christmas Past. So the cab driver guy who takes, I don't remember the character's name. What's the character's name on that? Anyway, when he goes to Christmas Past, right? And it's his mom and his dad comes home from the butcher shop, and he's got the milk-fed veal, and he gives him like 5 pounds of veal or whatever. And the dad walks off, but it's the mom who, like, tenderly, caresses Johnny. I think it's Johnny, right? It's little Johnny.
The brother, right?
No, I think it is. Well, they were brothers, yes, but I think I can't remember. But the whole point is, the ghost of Christmas Past, whenever he takes the person back to their home, it's waterfalls. They always cry. They always break down. There's nothing you could possibly do to fight back that feeling of that nostalgic moment of being homesick for what you had in the past. I don't know if you guys, that relates, if you guys remember that exact scene, but
yeah, I'm kind of forgetting that one, but yeah, I did. Like, it's Frank Cross. That's Bill Murray's character.
Thank you, Frank Cross. Yeah, Frank Cross.
Yeah.
I think it was. I apologize. The reference is he talked about somebody he took, the cab driver, the Ghost of Christmas Past, took some other gangster, some other tough guy to the past, and he showed him his mom or something, and it was, can't remember who it was. Why Johnny sounds so familiar, but the guy was, like a tough guy, and he broke down crying when he took him to the past and showed him his childhood. This one little moment of kindness.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, it does kind of sound familiar. Christmas time is coming. I'm sure we'll rewatch it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. But some gangster or something. Is this? If I remember, is it New York or Chicago? I can't remember where the thing is set. Maybe it was New York. Maybe Chicago. Who's the gangster guy in Chicago? It was John.
Not. Oh crap. Not Gallagher.
No, it wasn't John. It was
Dillinger, right?
John Dill. No, I don't know if it. Maybe it was John Dillinger. That sounds Midwestern. I think he was, but Al Capone. No, that's different. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter. But the point was, the feeling that you have idealized this, at least a couple moments. I know, obviously people have terrible childhoods. Don't get me wrong. But the fact of looking back on a past artifice that was created in your mind that doesn't actually exist is hard to. I mean, it's not real. It's like.
Well, we've talked about it, like, your notion of a perfect summer day is not a actual day that you lived. It's a combination of many days that you've idealized into this perfect idealization. It's not real.
Yeah. That's why I like that line, that inaccessible tower of the past. It's like the whole like telephone game memory concept. Not to toot our own horn, but I'm pretty sure Kim and I came up with that. But no, we definitely were talking about our memories being similar to like telephone game, where you experience something once, but that experience, that moment that you experience, it's just what's stored in your head is like your perception of that moment. But like, think about that moment, all kinds of other things were happening you just weren't perceptive of. So just because you perceived it, it's not like that's the factual event that happened. You have your little bit of it, and that's at best you have your little bit of experiencing that moment. But then when you think back on it, you're thinking back of like what you remember about it, and then years later you think back, you're remembering what you remembered, and you keep remembering what you remembered the last time you thought about it, remembered, and like this telephone game thing kind of happens. And that to me speaks directly to this inaccessible tower of the past. Like that actual moment that happened is inaccessible, I think, to all of us. I mean, even I think we're getting better as like a species of capturing things, right? You can take video of something, like you can capture audio, but even that, like, is it capturing everything? Like a camera is still like a field of view, right? So things that are happening outside that field of view, just because you don't see them doesn't mean they didn't happen.
Camera doesn't tell you what it smelled like.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah.
Well, so and I would even argue that, say you had an interaction with somebody that was filmed, and 25 years later you could be shown that film, but what you remember is going to be not what they said, but how you interpreted what they said. You're going to remember what you felt they meant more than what they actually said.
Right. Yeah, to look back on it later, you might be like, that's totally different than my experience, my memory of what happened, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like when my wife is like, I told you to do XYZ, and I'm like, I have no memory of you telling me to do XYZ. But yet I'm still wrong.
I'm gonna shoot the moon on this one, guys. I'm gonna shoot the moon with a reference to a movie and a callback to a previous episode, 12 Angry Men. So,
right.
Did you guys, either of you watch?
No, not yet. Yeah.
Okay. And then just in general, the concept of human testimony, eyewitness testimony. How is it possible that it is so unreliable? Because it is terribly unreliable.
Right.
Like terribly, terribly flawed. And I think it 100% points to the game of telephone, whereby consciously or unconsciously, you would have police involved, and they're trying to guide you through this process of recalling something. Maybe you saw something, maybe you didn't, maybe you heard something. You were there. You should know, right? You should know. You remember that, don't you? You were
right. Yeah,
right. That thing that you saw. What if it was this?
Doesn't it seem more likely? This is probably what happened, right?
This is probably what happened, right? So you're building this narrative, and every time the person recalls and tries to form words onto what it felt like or smelled like or sounded like or whatever, they're re-encoding this memory over and over and over again. It's like rewriting on old cassette tape. If you guys remember, it's probably don't even know what I'm talking about.
Well, and that's just it. The human brain doesn't record events; it narrates them.
But it recalls how it felt, and it narrates. So my point is, as you are recalling the event and then re-embedding it in a memory over and over and over, you can change it.
Right.
So as just like game of telephone, there's the exact right metaphor. It always starts out with a clear message. Hey, I'll see you at the pizzeria on Friday, 5 o'clock, whatever. By the end, it's fuck you and your mom. I'm gonna kill you, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Don't ever come on my lawn again, or whatever. I mean, and what it's just a series of tiny little mutations. So as you're recalling, I was getting to like the brain chemistry of the thing. When we recall a memory, not the narration of it, Tucker, I think you're right. This is a different topic, but the how it felt to be in there. This is why I go back to like, where were you on 9/11?
Yeah.
It becomes this contextualized thing where you can't just say, yeah, I saw it on TV. No. TV woke me up. I remember getting out of bed and it was on. And I normally don't pay attention, but there's something weird about this one. And then I get to work an hour later and it's different at the bar. And everybody and all the rest, like the whole thing, it's like a narration, but it's also about how it feels. That's it. Unmistakable. It's not going to be lost in translation. Like these moments of, where were you when JFK got shot or whatever, is so contextualized. It locks in and it prevents this narrative drift. It prevents the game of telephone from taking over. But at the brain chemistry level, I believe what happens is you're recalling. So there's some kind of a decoding, unwinding process where it's retrieving signal that's been, stored in a pattern in your brain, in your neurons. There's some pattern in there, but as you access it, when you put it back in place, so to speak, you have the ability to change it as it gets relocked in. So every time you remember that thing, you have the ability to change it. And then people are, I'm sure, are familiar with a smell taking them back.
Right.
So the smell comes from a different part of the brain, a deeper, older limbic part of the brain that's connected with taste, and it's more primal than neocortex, kind of, visual cortex kind of. It's like it's so primitive that it is harder to narrate and then re-encode and rewrite a smell than it is to imagine what it was like to see something or hear something at a given day or time. And so we have like these levels of signal that get embedded in us with different levels of fidelity and ability to be manipulated or mutated with our narration and our recollection. So every time we recall this thing, because I don't disagree that the person on the witness stand believes what they're saying, right? We're not saying people are lying when we say, oh, eyewitness testimony is unreliable. Like this, most of the time, it's not even someone involved in the case, just a bystander that gets interviewed. They have no dog in the fight. Like they don't want a murderer walking around the street killing. And by the way, if you convict the wrong person, it's implied that the murderer is still out there.
Right.
Why the hell would anybody want to put the wrong person in prison? It's literally probably the worst experience imaginable, I think, to wrongly convict somebody.
Yeah.
So, but it happens over
Right.
and over and over and over. And the person was standing right there. There's a crowd of people. They all saw it or whatever. I mean, it happens so much. It is so profound in the past, specifically when you did not have video cameras everywhere and DNA and all the rest. How much of a change there has been,
Right.
in our society based on, back to Tucker's usage, the laws of nature or whatever, these things that are not susceptible to narrative coloring of facts. I think that's really where it's at, is realizing how much of our past is just created based off of how we feel about what it was or how we narrate it now or current events or whatever. It's literally just doesn't even exist.
Heavy.
And
well,
now
cool.
let me throw one last thing on that.
Okay.
If this exists, and we kind of, I think, agree that it does, think about how that can be played upon at a political level. Meaning, like, bring out the concept of homesickness or nostalgia from an individual to a collection of individuals.
I think I know where you're going with this.
So think about how filthy the political process is, where the reality of what someone at a leadership position is trying to do versus how they want to get to the point where they get the levers of power. I don't think they care so much about facts and figures. I don't think they care about the truth of the thing. You know, they're self-delusional that they have to be in charge because they're the best at running this thing, and they will self-delude, justify after the fact why it is they have to do this. Anyway, the point is, playing on people's nostalgia for times of the past that are towers that never existed. That's powerful. I mean, that is beyond powerful. It's probably right where the fight is happening right now in modern political arenas.
Yeah, good point. The flow of information, control of that, right?
Control of comparison. Comparing, because what you're implying is now's worse than it was back then, or the future will be worse than it is today. If you move the bar forward or whatever, we're on the wrong path, we're going the wrong direction, whatever you want to call this thing.
Yeah.
And what I'm getting at is that's like the cradle of propaganda. Yeah.
Ooh, I like that phrase there, the cradle of propaganda. Truly.
Well, because we're all it's in every one of us. If we just talked about how, even with the best intentions, our own recollection of reality is skewed or colored by our narrations and our personal point of view. I think it's a very powerful, history in general, right? Go back to Orwell in 1984. He who controls the present controls the past. Who controls the past controls the future. The ability to manipulate these concepts of what it once was like really is the most powerful rhetoric there is.
Yeah.
What a bummer. How about this? ChatGPT, give us a cheery quote about quotes.
Okay, thank you. Because I was like, I was gonna try to wind down, but yeah, I like that a cheerful quote. I like the idea of prompting it for something cheerful. So before I hit send on this, so super fun. I expected it to be fun, and we only got through like 6 quotes. Well, there's a bonus quote in there, but so definitely something we can come back to from time to time. I think maybe even next week. I don't know. We can figure that out again. But yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for listening. If you want to get a hold of us, sendingpoets@gmail.com is the best way. And yes, let's close this here with a cheerful quote about quotes that ChatGPT is going to provide as I click this button. And this comes from, Ralph Waldo Emerson. How about that? I'll just read the description about it first. This witty remark found in Bartlett's familiar Quotations playfully mocks the overuse of quotations and encourages original thinking, ironically, by being quoted often. It's a lighthearted take on the value of personal insight over repeating others' words. This is very appropriate because we're kind of doing this dance today, aren't we, of repeating others' words, but also injecting our own thoughts. So yeah. So that's beautiful. Okay, so here's the quote. I hate quotations. Tell me what you know.